afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us here in the Aspen Room. I'd like to tell you a bit about our wonderful speaker, Maureen McNamara.
Yes!
Yes.
Clap, everyone!
Actually, pretty much everybody's a plant. Most people
That's
here know you.
I was giving out cookies earlier, but just come to the amphitheater. Bag of Doritos for you if you come.
So Maureen's background is she's a trainer, facilitator, and coach. She's led hundreds of workshops and coaches business professionals and entrepreneurs to create more success and joy in their lives. She has trained and certified over 10,000 employees, managers, and owners in national certification and C programs. And Maureen has worked with Colorado Department of Revenue Liquor Enforcement Division on the Responsible Vendor Act that was passed in 2005. And she worked with the Colorado Marijuana Enforcement Division, the MED, to design the Responsible Cannabis Vendor Program in 2014. She's also the founder and chief facilitator with Cannabis Trainers, a corporation founded to create and deliver training solutions to the cannabis industry.
That's right. That's true too.
Maureen is going to talk about what is medical advice from a bud tender point of view.
Thanks, Aurora. Yeah. Who here has ever tried the cannabis? The cannabis. Yeah. All right. Let the record reflect that's almost everybody. Maybe one shy person in the back that's not willing to be seen or heard. Who here is currently selling cannabis legally? All right. Good. All the hands stayed up. No one came down. No one came down on that. And who's here from management, leadership? Okay, sweet. And is anyone currently a medical professional?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, all right. Medical professionals in the room. I love it. So when we talk about sharing medical advice, it's certainly something that we need to leave to the doctors, right? And so it's, if you're not a medical professional, let us not play one. I am not a doctor. Pretty sure I've never dated a doctor. I am not an attorney. I am a trainer. What I love is inspiring people to know the rules and play by the rules. So we created a compliance class. It's about selling cannabis responsibly with integrity. Who heard about the news article that came out? 400 Colorado dispensaries were phone called. I believe 10 different women said, "I'm pregnant. Will cannabis assist with my morning?" You heard of this, right? And do you remember some of the statistics or overall what was the gist?
Overwhelmingly giving medical advice to pregnant women.
That's right. 87% of the dispensary agents or bud tenders that answered the phone actually in some way gave medical advice. Many of them said, "Totally, this will help." Only, I believe it was less than 13% even threw out the disclaimer, "Please check with your medical team. Please check with a medical professional." And so based on that, it became abundantly clear that we wanted to make sure that the only people giving medical advice were medical professionals. And as we know, most of our bud tenders are not in the role of having been professionally trained in medicine. I also know it's a little tricky because many doctors that have gone through traditional medical school don't know that we have an endocannabinoid system. And so where do people get their information? So I'd love to know, again, show of hands, who's currently involved with a dispensary selling cannabis, medical or adult use? Okay. Supporting dispensaries in some way? Got it. Medical professional. Great. And then press folk? There they are. Good. Good. So I kind of want to know who are we, knowing how we can be most impactful, leaving the medical stuff to the medical professionals. So is it, when we think about a dispensary agent, is it tough or easy to not provide medical advice?
Well, it's tough.
Yeah, what makes it a challenge?
People come asking. They expect you to know.
Every day, every shift, people will come thirsty for information. Will this help my insomnia? will this help that sciatica? What are people asking for my people that are live in dispensaries? What are some of those common requests?
Pain,
Sleep,
number one.
Anxiety.
get off their medications.
PTSD.
So people come thirsty for information. And it's true that some dispensary agents may know even more than a specific cannabis, just a specific medical professional that hasn't been trained in cannabis. And this is the delight of workshops like this, to really increase our information. And so when we think about the challenges, it's also true that the majority of our, has anyone ever been misunderstood? No. It's like every relationship just flashed through your mind. That in a Make-Up Statistic Sunday, I will say, the majority of our communication is misunderstood. But you have ever had that experience if you were really clear on what you said to somebody, and then the next day, they told you something totally different? Is that how much can a person really understand in that moment with a dispensary agent to really lock in the possibilities of the plant? And so knowing that a lot of our communication can be misunderstood, being really clear in our language is key. Welcome. So what can and can't we say? And that's a pretty big deal. Of course people can say anything, but in the spectrum of what's really risky to very risky to kind of risky, what's something that a dispensary agent might say that falls on the very risky side, plain doctor?
Cures cancer.
Yes. This will totally fix you.
Takes all your pain away.
Yeah, this will eradicate that chronic pain.
There's no
Yeah,
answers
for
that.
sure. Now, what would be something on the less risky scale?
This may help you for
I've seen other patients be helped.
General, may, might, I've seen this,
Anecdotal.
right? And so some anecdotal inference is I'm still calling it kind of risky, because actually anything above, I'm not a medical professional. Anything else we say, like, but this is uplifting, or this is good for no vomiting, which is probably a better way to say that. And so when we think about that, if the consumer, if the patient or the adult believes that something in our interaction has them leaving of, oh, she told me this is going to cure my migraine, then it could be practicing medicine. And given that the majority of our communication is misunderstood, even when we use that less risky language, like this might, what lands is, this is the cure I've been looking for, even though it's not what the dispensary agent said. And so when we think about if they believe it's going to treat a medical condition, again, this is from the dispensary agent side, it could be a situation, could be a problem. So if they leave feeling or having the impression that this tincture is going to treat, cure, mitigate, oops, we're practicing, the possibility is that we're practicing medicine. And so it does become complicated. So we want to avoid that, and in the spirit of, we feel like we need to say something. So after that, 400 dispensaries were called, and the majority of people dispensed medical advice to the pregnant women. We created a program called Say What? Not Playing Doctor. And the attorney that I co-created with said, let's just tell the dispensary agents, you simply say, I'm not a doctor. And that's it. And I was like, that's not practical. Because then we're faced with a patient or adult says like, oh, okay, but is it possible that this would be a contribution to my sleep? And then the lawyer said, the dispensary agent will then say, I'm not a doctor. And then the person will say, but might it help? I'm not a doctor. And so there's this middle ground where if we don't speak to the actual dis-ease, is it possible that we can talk about the general effects? Now, what are some of our disclaimers on the labels of cannabis?
Keep away from children.
Okay, keep away from children, for sure. What else?
THC.
may not have been tested for efficacy. What else?
Not FDA approved.
Sure. And it depends where we are in the world. So, lady needs glasses. Do you have a product that helps with eyesight?
Ask your doctor.
Thank you, Jennifer. You get a star.
And the nurse says, maybe glaucoma.
The labels, Colorado, the labels on the container and any marketing layer shall not make any claims regarding health or physical benefits to the patient. That's in Colorado. Another quote. There may be long-term physical and mental health risks from the use of marijuana, including additional risks for women who are or may become pregnant or are breastfeeding. In California, intoxicating effects, cannabis use while pregnant or breastfeeding may be harmful. In Canada, the label shall never have anything misleading or deceptive that is likely to create an erroneous impression that the characteristics, safety, health effects, health risks of cannabis. And so when the women called dispensaries saying, I've got morning sickness, the enforcement division came out with a memo that said, anything that would try to circumvent what is written on our labels will be seen as going against regulation. And so being attentive to the language on labels and not saying anything that would be against that was really key. And so, in a moment we're going to talk about some language that we could say, but as you already said, some really general language is the less risky on the part of the scale. But when I talk to bud tenders, and we've trained several thousand dispensary agents, bud tenders, patient counselors, what's another name for that person that's selling cannabis? Your
Patient
colleagues, consultants, yes, there's so many. Is disclaimer 2 times. 1, I'm not a medical professional. I have a lot of wisdom about cannabis, but I'm not a doctor. Please check with your medical professional. And then the second disclaimer is none of our products are designed to cure specific disease. So we can take a lead from the nutraceuticals and health claims and things like that. So using really general language, speaking to the structure and function is a safer place to land. So again, these are the 2 types of disclaimers. Please consult a medical professional. Now, what if somebody comes into a dispensary and says, I've got the migraines. What do you have that will help a migraine? What would a well-trained, non-doctor playing dispensary agent say?
Not a medical doctor.
I'm not a doctor. And then,
Consult your doctor.
please, but they're going to say, I don't have a doctor. I don't want to go through the whole hassle of a medical card. I can't afford a doctor, but man, these migraines are taking me down.
This has helped other patients.
Right. So now we go to more general language. Now here's what's interesting, is if we initially respond, which you all did beautifully, but there will certainly be people that say, I don't got a doctor for the migraines. Who here has ever had or known someone to have a migraine? And are we finding that cannabis may be a contribution? Right, and there are certain types of cannabis that may be a contribution to that. So once we give our initial 2 disclaimers, then we can begin to possibly share some general information about the effects, okay? So if we look at the less risky versus plain doctor side, this is what could happen. Personally, I found, now notice how on the less risky side, the word migraine is not in there. Because migraine is a true or false that migraine is a specific medical condition.
Yeah.
Right. So when we say, this is exciting, we're like, wordsmiths, win for the day. Instead of migraine, we say general head and neck tension. General head and neck tension is not a specific medical condition. And we're safer with language like that. Here's another example. the general head and neck tension piece. Now I get it can be a little verbose, but in this, and again, it's still risky because we spoke after saying, I'm not a doctor. But if we're claiming that this will totally fix it, usually within 20 minutes, that's dispensing medical advice. It's not something a dispensary agent is trained to do. Now, when I asked the earlier question, what are people asking for? If someone came in and said, insomnia, it's, oh, I haven't slept in days, or I've only slept for an hour. If somebody immediately, if a dispensary agent immediately goes to, well, this will help with sleep, we're still just crossed the line. So before even talking about, and which terpenes do we believe will be a contribution to relaxation? Yeah, and so we're going to look and maybe we can talk about some of the products that have linalool. And right between the person saying, I've got insomnia, and a great dispensary agent, 2 disclaimers. 1, I'm not a doctor, please check with your medical team. And none of our products are designed to cure insomnia. Pause. Let's take a look at some products that are generally known as relaxing. And when we do that, we've just put enough gap between. Now we're talking to the structure and function of a product rather than insomnia. Okay? So again, on the right, specific medical condition. On the left, little less risky, general. Yeah?
So speaking of risky, where we live, everything's pretty conservative. So in telling somebody to consult their medical professional in the past has in turn caused their doctor to drop them completely. So then that causes a whole other bag of issues with our patients saying, you told me to talk to my doctor, but my doctor won't see me.
Right.
So
So
there's a huge block there.
the comment was, if we encourage a patient or an adult who's not moving through the medical system but still using cannabis as medicine to talk to a doctor, and they do talk to a doctor, there can be a spiral effect of some medical professionals be like, cannabis? Now you're off health insurance.
Or you're out of my office, get out of here.
Or- right,
I'm not speaking
or
to you,
get
I'm
out.
not treating you anymore, period.
It's a tricky time.
I can say, when I ran dispensaries and stuff, we always provided a one-pager with links to studies that have been done about different conditions, so that the patient consultants weren't expected to provide that medical advice. We also, we had a sheet for patients that said, if you're gonna go talk to your doctor about cannabis, here's what you need to consider.
Mhm.
You know, you can't go into a physician's office and make them feel like a fool because you know more than they do, right? And bring a study with you and say, hey doc, what do you think about this? Don't, you know, and so I think there are things that we can do to massage that experience for patients to make it a little bit easier. But
Or
certainly,
doctors that we know that have
as I
some
said,
cannabis
holistic
savvy.
doctors.
But it,
We don't have a local medical doctor.
They travel in and out, so most of our doctors are,
And a
Yeah.
lot of them are with the
Yeah.
VA.
What did I
Which
say?
is a
I
huge
still wanna
problem.
say it though.
say it again?
I still wanna say that.
Yeah, we still want to say it,
Okay.
and there can be, and I look forward to, maybe it exists right now, the future of being able to converse with a cannabis-trained medical professional, even if it's not live visit, right? But get some coaching, get some connection for it. And so, thanks Dr. Rachel, we still get to say that I'm not a doctor. We would encourage you to check with a medical professional. Now, I get that that doesn't exist for your time. I wonder if it exists telephonically, visually, at least to get coaching. I think that's a possibility. Sir Art?
Some brands are coming out with effect quality products. So some of the products might say bliss or sleep or headache or
Yeah.
pain. So as a person working in a dispensary, I mean, if somebody asks for something that can help with sleep, what would you say? Hey, this product says it.
Well, here's what's
This product
fascinating.
claims it.
And if you're already confused by all the speakers you've heard today, yeah. And maybe you'll be even more confused tomorrow. Is that what may be relaxing to my system might make you dance party for hours.
Right. Yeah.
Is that each endocannabinoid, everybody is different. And what may be a contribution to releasing your general head and neck tension might make me want to throat punch somebody. and so it really is individual and how it interacts with our systems. And so when we use general language, so we're getting an idea of this risky, less risky, about what is less risky to say, is that when we choose to be general with our language, then we give people an opportunity and encourage people to fall in love with microdosing. The smallest amount of cannabis to achieve the desired medicinal effect, if we could all encourage that, and encourage people to really take note. It was 3:30 on a snowy Tuesday, and I felt generally relaxed, and I had a grilled cheese, and I took a tincture that was this, and this, 5 minutes later, and a half hour later, and 3 hours later, right? And then to be aware of how their system is reacting. So our topic is, don't play doctor unless you are a medical professional. And what can our dispensary agents say without dispensing medical advice? So I think we've got 4.5 minutes for questions. Who has the first question? I'm not a doctor, nor an attorney. We train compliance classes. We train people to know the rules, play by the rules, so that every dispensary stays open and safe access is maintained. First question.
I am a doctor.
So you totally should play doctor. Please.
So one of the things that I've told patients is you'll get a wealth of information from the dispensary. How can that bud tender give that advice? Can they do it by saying, this has worked on this patient or this patient? Is that something that I can expect?
So if I go back 15 slides, I'll show you this arrow that says anything a dispensary agent, a non-medically trained person, which is, make up statistics someday, 99% of the people working in a dispensary are not medical professionals. Maybe more than that, 99.2. That anything that is said after I'm not a medical professional is a little risky. Because misinformation, because people mishear things, and they will leave and go into their car and said, that friendly dispensary agent just told me this is going to cure my migraine. Information is often misconstrued. What we can say, again, it's on a risk scale, is speaking generally about the characteristics. It's okay for us to say the terpene called linalool is generally relaxing. The terpene limonene is generally uplifting. Every body is different. Please be really aware when you consume and take detailed notes to find out what works best for you. Now, there are dispensary agents that are brilliant and savvy and likely have anecdotal information in their pocket where 30, 50 patients have come back and said, this was the migraine eradicator. And they can pretty confidently say, this has worked, but the word migraine is a medical condition, and so it's less risky to say general head and neck stress. Next question.
How much can you rely on your own experience?
So this is where it's really tricky, and I invite medical professionals to jump in. You've got the next question, or comment, is every body is different. And our own experience may be, a little gauge in painting a picture, but really encouraging people to do their own recon with as micro-dosing as possible is essential.
I have a comment about that.
I'm a medical doctor, and I would not advise any medical doctors to say what we've medical malpractice insurance covered.
Right.
So we professional health providers who are licensed really should not be in the habit of referring patients to dispensary agents to give them information that we don't know yet. It's just a fact. I think we need to come up with a scenario where we are supporting each other.
Yeah.
And Maureen, you're doing a great job. I came in to hear what you had to say.
Thanks, Dr. Rachel.
Amazing. But we need to come up with a system so that we can work with one another. But we, healthcare licensed professionals, should not be referring our patients to you. That's mostly to cover your behind. So it's not saying that we don't know what you're talking about. Because even in the clinic, I talk about patient anecdote, and I have more liability, coverage. I can talk about the patient experiences. I can talk about specific products, and that, a whole bunch of my patients with this diagnosis have benefited from this brand, this chemical profile, etc. I have a lot more freedom to say that. But at the same time, I am talking about anecdote, and I think that's perfectly appropriate. But it would be inappropriate for me to place that liability on an agent.
I think, and I just want to honor that we are 1 minute over time. Our next event happens in 10 minutes. I will stay here for as long as you desire. I know we had a comment here. Thank you, and Nurse Drewsley. What was?
When you say everybody is different, I think we in the medical profession can relate to that because of the multitude of antidepressants that are available. Not
So
everyone
the comment is, this is not everybody is different, is not unique to cannabis, will treat you differently. The same, right? If Nurse Julesy and I share a favorite cookie, that wasn't medicine because a patient can never give away their own medicine. It was an adult use and we gifted it to each other. Yeah, I teach compliance. So we might have half a cookie that we believe samesies, and we would have very different experiences. So it is true with many, many, many drugs out there, right?
Antidepressants.
Antidepressants is an example of that. Nurse Julesy?
And I just want to make a comment too, to your respect. I know the physicians, you have a hard time with it being a Schedule I drug. And being cannabis nurses in this industry being developed and through Cannabis Nurses Network, we are actually able to have nurses in all the different states so that they can come, a patient can be referred to a nurse, then who can then talk to the doctors. Let's say you want to titrate off of your opiates. We don't just titrate them off. We have to call the doctor up and say, hey, this doctor, they'd like to titrate off their meds and complement it with cannabis. And we work with other specialties. And I think that's where we're going to be bridging the gap at a national level and pulling together all healthcare professionals together. Nurses have always been the glue. I always say we're the gorilla glue of this wonderful expansion of this pioneering field. So just embrace it, love it, and we're here to help you guys.
So what I'll say too is, as Dr. Knox, Nurse Julesy, to be able to, because I hear you, especially from my folk that are live in a dispensary, there is a lot of pressure on the agent to know. And please do continue to educate your team. And I look forward to a very near future where access, regardless of where our zip code is, to some real good medical trained wisdom is accessible. Your question?
Especially with Healthy Choices, that's the only one that comes to, well, one of the only ones that come through our area. And, they have the patients write out their own medical log. And I feel like that's changed the most part with it, is actually giving the patients the power back to heal their own body and their own condition, and to find out for themselves, because that's something we've said repeatedly, with sativa and indicas and things like that, and just the difference of how it can affect people that we don't know, we don't know until you try it out and come back, and we'll just keep trying to help you find that right dose, and just really encouraging them to have their own medical logs. I feel like we've kind of stripped people away from that from forever ago to never just blindly take whatever and not realize why or why it may or may not.
Absolutely, and again, that's not unique to cannabis, as Dr. Rachel will tell you. For almost any medication, is we got to figure out what works, and we might have to up it or lower it, or fewer milligrams, or different, or that didn't really give you the desired effect, let's try something else. And we're in the same, so empowering our adults and patients to fall in love with the least amount of cannabis to get those desired medicinal effects, or desired effects, is where to start. And really only their body and their own wisdom knows what that is. So
So
empowering people.
We're kind of hoping that is kind of that part of that bridge where we're not, they're writing down for themselves what their
Yeah.
medical
So
needs
that
are.
can be really quite a simple piece of paper. There's a beautiful journal that Green Flower Media has created, that Dr. Sulak out of Maine has created. I think it's an online journal. So there's plenty of options to refer people to.
The hard part too is that the doctors that come, it's so irritating because whether the patient is 26 or 96, they tell them to start, they write the same thing on the paperwork as a recommendation, the same exact sentence. And it tells them to start with 10 milligrams of THC. And that 96-year-old lady goes home and turns 10 milligrams of THC and becomes the most scared little old lady that she's ever been. She doesn't want to come again.
So just for everyone to, tell me your name again. Ashley. Ashley mentioned that a few of the recommendations that come into their dispensary,
Not a few, every single one.
there is one renegade doctor out there.
No,
There are many doctors out there that are, and so the 26-year-old woman or the 96-year-old woman has the same recommendation. Again, it's not a prescription. Schedule 1, we're all illegal shenaniganers. Start with 10 milligrams. Now, in our Cell Smart class, we coach people, even though most states, and I perceive Canada will when they allow and create regulations for infused products next year, states are calling a dose a serving 10 milligrams. No, that is not the starting place for many, many people. For many, many people, it might be 1.5 milligrams, 2 milligrams, where 10 milligrams is going to create a lot of stress and anxiety for 96-year-old Gertrude. Totally. My name's Maureen.
Regulators do not confer with specialists in this industry.
Or scientists.
Or scientists.
Or anybody.
I'm on the Cannabis Commission and I want to pull out my hair every time I'm in one of these meetings talking to these folks who are making these decisions that they don't understand the research, the science, the clinical application, and nothing. They're the ones who are making these rules.
Yeah, and it's up to us then as the dispensary agent or those coaching and supporting dispensary agents to say, especially after asking great questions like, tell me how you want cannabis to contribute to your wellness. And tell me about your experience or perspective of cannabis. That gives us information to be a non-doctor, non-medical professional guide, right? And we're going to set, if someone says, I've been smoking cannabis before you were born, I'm sure I can take down half that chocolate bar. You, of course, will say, it's a totally different experience than smoking, right? The whole 11-hydroxy experience, it's like comparing oranges and giraffes. We can't compare, right, smoking to consumption. So we coach for microdosing. Hey, even though a square, you'll be able to see it breaks off as square as 10 milligrams, please start with just a small corner of that. Yeah, your question.
So is there an industry standard definition of what is low THC versus medium THC versus high THC?
The question is there a standard industry definition of low, medium, and high THC for like a lab result that has?
Yeah, like for
So,
example, the content in a joint.
sure. So there are lab results about the THCA of the plant, that most of which, when we combust it, will transform likely to delta-9 THC, but not all, and it depends on how it's consumed. If you heard an earlier talk, it's not just delta-9 THC that would contribute to those effects, it's a lot of different terpenes and cannabinoids that may be entouraging with it. And so it's a starting place, but it's not, you'll listen to professional, not a plant professional, I teach compliance, but a 15% THCA flower and a 27% THC flower, what else is going on there? Those might create an equal level of intoxication, depending on what else is in. And so it really is a test it out to see how your system, the system of the patient or adult will interact with it. And of course, setting, how 10 milligrams in 5 different types of edibles Was it canna butter? How was it processed? Would be different. So there is a little bit of a experimental delight.
Have they eaten, are they hydrated,
Food,
have they slept?
eating, meals.
Totally, is it, right? So the lipid soluble, it's gonna be an elevated experience. If I have medicated granola with yogurt, it's likely gonna be a heightened experience. Yeah.
I was just gonna add, I think part of the reason that there isn't a set, low, medium, and high dosage is a lot due to the federal illegality of cannabis, right? So it's happening by states, and each state has different regulations, and they define a serving as something different, and they decide, milligrams as different things. So it's, until there is that cohesive federal program that kind of guides that, it's always gonna be a crapshoot.
Well, and you heard Leslie speak earlier as well. We have variants, right? We know that if something says this is 10 milligrams, in Colorado at least, the variance is 15% of that. So it might be math on a Sunday, 8.5 or 11.5. Did I do that? How'd I do?
Close.
Close, okay. Thank you. I would
Not a
love to
medical
stay in touch
professional.
with you. CannabisTrainers.com. We teach compliance classes and we endeavor to make them inspiring so that every dispensary agent knows the rules, plays by the rules, and maintains safe access to make sure patients can come get their medicine at a licensed lab-tested dispensary. So I look forward to staying in touch with you. I'm going to be here. What a delight! Thanks for the interaction.